Hey everyone, welcome back to AI After Hours presented by Astra. I'm Sean Fleming, your host. For anyone new here, the premise of our show is pretty simple. It's about cutting through the noise, finding signals that actually matter, and turning them into better decisions. That's what our season one's all about. It's going to be 10 episodes. This is episode three. Throughout the season, we're going to talk about planning, forecasting, automation, operations, and how all of that rolls up into business performance. Today is our third and final episode for retail. It's about demand forecasting in retail. Uh, the crew today. So we have Bob back again. Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, how's it going?
Third and final episode for Bob. I think Bob, you've set the standard pretty high, so we'll have to see how the rest of the season goes. But I know I've had a lot of fun so far with our conversations in the retail space, and it's been great to get your perspective from someone who's been in the retail trenches for decades.
Definitely
Hart,
was my pleasure.
yeah, no, it's been fun. And then Harsha, unfortunately, is not feeling well. He was on episodes 1 and 2. He won't be able to join us today. We're hopeful he'll be feeling better for episode 4 next week. And then we have Varun, who's the CEO of Astra. Thanks, Varun, for coming
Hey,
back again.
good seeing you.
So yeah, let's get into it. So some quick context, because this kind of ties into the last two episodes. So if you're just tuning in, this is our third retail focused episode. Episode 1, we went kind of wide into retail CPG, some of the different things that happen there, why it's important, what are the signals you can do to identify these things and avoid them, things like volatility, stockouts, overstock. Episode 2 is much more focused on margin and how these different types of issues, when looked at scale, can really affect your bottom line. Um, and if you can't protect your margin, your forecast is probably wrong. So we're gonna dive in a little bit deeper here on forecasting. But that's kind of the foundation for the episodes that made up this retail arc. So let's dive into it. Well, actually, before we get into the questions, is there any updates anyone wants to share? That anything that's transpired since the last episode? I don't know, Bob. Has your book started to top the charts on Amazon? Maybe a quick update on that would be fun first.
I would say it's actually taking a slow but surely move, which is actually good. So far we've had a few sales. I'll say we've been out there for 2 weeks, and we've sold about 200, a little over 200. And tomorrow, I actually have a meeting here at the local Barnes and Nobles where they've asked to advertise some of the books. So I'm actually bringing some of the books there that will be here in the Frisco Barnes and Nobles.
Okay, so maybe a little signing event if you want to go see Bob and get your book signed.
Definitely.
That's great, Bob. That's great to hear.
Well, thank you.
Varun, any updates on your end?
No, man. I'm just my travel has been hectic. Yeah, I just got back. I'm so looking forward to the next gamut of things that we're planning for.
Yeah, you definitely keep us busy. That's for sure. I think for me personally, I put together a pretty poor performance in a golf tournament with some friends, but won some money on longest putt, so I'll take that as a win. So
That is a win.
yeah, so wasn't the worst day ever because I kind of made up for it. But anyways, so Bob, when we're talking to retailers, one of the things I keep running into and I keep hearing is that, everyone wants to do a better forecast. But when you actually look at like how planning teams work, most of them are stuck on the same problems they've been working on for most of their career. It's the same, concerns. They keep using the same workarounds. What's really making demand forecasting so hard right now? And maybe you can help me understand like how all of this compounds and why it's been such a difficult problem to solve up to this point.
Yeah, most definitely. Sean, I think the core issue here is that we are still trying to solve a 2026 problem with a 2010 mindset. You see, most teams are still drowning in their spreadsheets or antiquated system that they use. And the reason why it's hard right now is because the signal to noise ratio has flipped. It used to be you'll have a seasonal trend and the and historical data, and you take that. That will put you or bring you about 80% of the way into your next season plan. However, now you have to account for more than that as far as information is concerned. So we have micro trends such as social media, supply chain disruptions, or hyper local demand shift. So all that taken into consideration creates a what I call a traffic jam or a highway pileup. And now with since we are already dealing with this pileup, you end up actually producing a forecast that is 100% accurate or close to what reality will be. You end up with starting your week with the wrong forecast or a then ultimately leads to a poor allocation. The marketing team, your system are actually struggling to try to you'll end up having planners in their Excel spreadsheet, which ultimately, but your so ultimately what he does that he creates perpetual state of reactive fixing past. You see what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed make it more challenging, and I love the tie-in of our season we have there. That was great, and I think with this proliferation of data, and even though there, it also becomes a challenge of trying to find a data point in the right way.
Mhm.
Tools of 2010 and the processes of 2010.
Oh, where we
So
are now, exactly.
yeah, that was great. Thank you. Harsha, today I'm going to pose to you a little bit more. So based on what Bob was saying, right, noisy and more fragmented in information from to try to garner in some do to cut through that to make sure that it's from the perspective of how we as Astra would approach this.
Novice, most retailers see forecast as an just an what it really does is, hey, that's what it is all about, right? If a specific store can sell about 500 units of act upon it very quickly. Or like, in terms of how we are, we talk about all the signals, right? Different signals, geographical, weather, and so if we can leverage this information and build a comprehensive system that's talking to information, when I say planning, merchandising planning, and also financial information, and then execute that at the supply chain, it is not just a forecast system that you're building. And that's exactly what we're doing here at Astra. We're not just building, you can do your financial planning, but you can execute. We bring in clarity. It's like a one-stop shop. You get the breadth of and make the decisions quickly. And how we are operating, we are using building the or allocations or that's very native to what others are. That's what Aurora is. The unlock or the markdown or how quickly you can act upon these decisions. You build a trusted operating system supply chain. Merchandising will start believing those brands can make those, giving out the right numbers, and my inventory is quite visible here. So I'm absolutely fine with taking that decisions very quickly. That's the unlock that you're providing to your customers, and that's exactly what Aurora does today. And we building with native AI native architecture is the biggest. It's not AI driven architecture. I want to be very clear about that. It's very AI native architecture. Like, we are using LLMs, what they are best for. We are using ML, what is that, or what the math is supposed to do. It is not just we are slapping an LLM on top of generic code and hey, you can predict a chat and do all of it. That's not how we are operating that's not how we are building the Aurora. We're building Aurora in a very pragmatic and very futuristic way, in where it reduces the amount of time your planning team can work on making those decisions. That's
No, I think
that's the biggest unlock for me.
Yeah, I think that was great. I think just to touch on a couple of the points you made. So like it sounds like, first you kind of need that operating system you described, or sometimes what we refer to as an orchestration layer, right?
Mhm.
To be the overarching connection point between investments that have been made in existing systems that are used by different teams,
Right.
so that all of the information is in one spot, and it's not so
Mhm.
much as like layering a chat bot on top of that where you're asking questions of it, but rather layering on decision intelligence on top of it, that's giving and proposing recommendations with confidence levels based on trends and the different systems and how they're connected and how reliable that information is, to then actually recommend to the planners or to whoever's using it, this is what you should do and why, and here's the systems I was able to get this information from. So that sounds like a really kind of powerful next step forward of kind of what you were describing, Bob, of the systems that are still kind of stuck in 2010, more reactive firefighting as opposed to this proactive approach of interconnected systems. So if you
Exactly.
if you had this proactive approach with recommendations of action from interconnected systems, what does that unlock for an organization and for planners?
It actually shifts the way planners approach planning altogether, right? So the new normal, when you look at it, it's a shift from curation to exception management, right? So the old way, it used to be the planner spends about 80% of the time manually inputting numbers and 20% of the time thinking or strategizing about what the plan should be. Now, in the new world with AI, the AI is actually handling your baseline, your promotion, your cannibalization logic. So ultimately, the planner now spends about the bulk of their time on 5% of the items that were flagged out from the application, saying there's a problem here, go ahead and handle this as a human. So ultimately, the big shift here is it brings up more confidence. So planners are becoming more confident and trusting the plan more. And when you trust your plan, you are actually more productive, if you see what I mean. So basically, that means that you are no longer sitting on millions in safety stock because because back in the time you used to pad or inflate your plan just in case, and you're no longer missing sales because you didn't trust the plan to fully commit into it. So allocation becomes more of a surgical task, right? So you are sending the right size and right color to the right doors in the first try, if you see what I mean. So ultimately, it turns the planning department from a cost center trying to minimize error into a value driver trying to maximize margin.
No, that was great. I think you touched on some really interesting and important points, and I love the thing you said about moving from curation to exception management, and that's kind of the biggest shift. And the Pareto analysis you gave, I think, was spot on as well. Where as you shift from this reactive planning to this proactive planning, your planners can actually now spend 80% of their time leveraging their knowledge and their
Mhm.
experience to work on the exceptions to even improve the plan even better, as opposed to 80% of their time on just trying to get the numbers to work out, right?
Exactly.
Which I think is probably the best way you can leverage AI in the world today. I know there's a lot of fear about AI replacing people, but I think that point you made highlights perfectly about how AI can actually augment people
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
be to focus on and do better the things that they will inherently know better than an AI, just given their domain expertise, their knowledge, and even their knowledge of their organization, their internal organization knowledge. So I
Exactly.
think, yeah, that was great, Bob. Thank you for that. So Varun, back to you, and then we'll do a little roundtable after that where we can all add our input on some of these points. So I just want to get your take on, like, as a CEO, forecasting quality isn't necessarily a planning function as much. I think the quality is more of something that bubbles up to the top across planners, across
Mhm.
departments.
Mhm.
How these different systems, like you were talking about earlier, oh, well, if this works, then finance has confidence in this, right? So there's, we were talking earlier about compounding issues. I think there's compounding issues organizationally as well when you don't get a forecast right. So I think maybe you can, give us an example of, like, what actually separates retailers when they treat forecasting like a strategic capability as opposed to a back office exercise, and what does that change for at an organizational level?
So I think in the last episode we touched upon like pray and spray. You remember
Yes,
that?
we did. Yeah.
Yeah. So the biggest lever, right? It unlocks in terms of the back operations. Like if you can bring your promo upliftment and with your financial planning that comes into picture, and if you say that if you have a right promo instead of just pray and spray, it's like spray and pray, you are reducing your you can have targeted promotions that kind of shifts the inter store logistics, or back and forth of DCs, the shifting and all of that kind of reduces the amount of money, saves tons of money. you know that's the biggest lever that happens, so it directly impacts your bottom line. That's where the unlock comes in from. And now, in terms of not just from a functional, a planning standpoint, but a retailer can lose that. They no longer will have that horizontal blindness. They can see a top level view of how each of these things are playing in, and kind of make that see the real unlock happening right at the grassroots level. That's what I would say. And again, you cannot just there's a term that I've heard very recently, like nobody's going to beat the market in the 13-week forecast, but the time you make the decisions quickly is the lever, is the advantage that you can do. So these has to be in place. Like oh, it's just forecast, we can do our math and just do all of these things. But if your planner is not doing those functions today as it's supposed to be, then you're not doing the right advantage at value, not bringing the right value to the table in terms of with your product or with your efficiency. You know.
Yeah, I could imagine too, and I'm glad you brought up the notion of, like, spray and pray, and Bob had mentioned earlier, like reactive firefighting. I think just from a morale standpoint, like, that's got to be exhausting, right? Whereas if you were to move to something like we've been describing, I think it probably could help as well from a longevity standpoint of your employees, of them wanting to stay around longer and work for your organization longer because they're now focusing, like we had discussed, 80% of their time on strategic thinking and what if scenarios, and actually, doing things that feel meaningful and aren't necessarily like a fire drill, right? Like I think if you live in a constant state of fire drills, that'll ultimately just, I think, naturally lead to burnout, which is usually when people start to refresh their resume, which I know every CEO doesn't want that because of the cost of turnover and then losing that person who has institutional knowledge.
But it drains you. Yes, that is
Yeah.
true.
Okay, cool. So let's go into some roundtable questions since there's only us on the call today. I'll just let whoever wants to, kind of hop in here first, and we can just add our perspectives as needed. But so I guess what's one thing about this next generation of retail forecasting we're describing that would actually matter to a planner on like a Monday morning?
Mm.
I imagine Monday mornings right now are probably a pretty stressful time in a planner's life. So maybe we can just speak to like what their new normal could look like on a Monday morning in this kind of next generation of forecasting.
No, definitely. We used to dread the Monday morning scramble, right? So, and instead of walking into a thousands alerts and multiple disconnected spreadsheet and system, the planners get a prioritized list of actions now, right? So it's no longer not just the forecast is off, but now you come in and it says the forecast is off in these 10 stores for these 5 SKU. And here's a recommendation of transfer that you need to do to fix it. So it changes the job from data entry to decision making, right? And it becomes more meaningful. Once again, like you said, strategizing on what I want to produce, and ultimately I'm producing something that is more meaningful. So basically, we are no longer asking what happened. We are now asking, what should I do to fix it?
Varun, you have any perspective on that you want to offer?
Again, like I said, most of the team has covered a lot of similar information. I think, like I said, instead of being proactive, instead of being reactive, we will be more proactive in making those decisions.
Yeah, I could imagine, Bob, that from a planner's standpoint, it probably would feel really good to be at Monday where you would maybe historically be at on like maybe a Wednesday,
Mhm.
if everything aligned, right? So now like the rest of the week is more of how do we make it better? How do we help improve margin? How can I set myself up for next week
For next week.
to make it even better than that, right? Like,
Exactly.
as opposed to just scrambling to get to a place where you're like feeling confident that, all right, this next iteration, I finally have the view I need to even act on it versus
Mhm.
acting on it right away Monday morning.
Exactly.
Cool. So where are retailers still losing forecast accuracy just because the data and signal architecture underneath can't keep up with the business actually needs? So I think this is more of a technical one.
No, I can answer that.
Yeah.
So I think we slightly touched upon this one in the last one as well. It's more about if you look at the legacy systems that are traditionally built, right? Someone is very good at financial planning. Someone is very merchandise financial planning when I'm saying, and then there is assortment planning that happens, and down comes the forecasting, and that is done by another different system. They don't talk to each other, and then you have a separate warehouse management systems. You know, they even though they hold the system of record, the execution happens at a different level, and then you have and downstreams consume the allocations and rest of the feed goes in. So how do I know that whatever we are doing in here or the upstream is sending out is accurately flowing down through whatever it's supposed to do? I still see a lot of gaps in how they are operating in terms of these with these traditional systems. I don't think the business are getting most value out of that.
Hmm.
That is fundamentally, um, that's a fundamental problem in design. It's a design flaw, I would call it. Like, you did not use your first principle thinking in doing that. If I have the option to redo that, I would try to, okay, you hold the system of record. Like, I want to see how can I execute on these decisions in a very quicker way, right? Or a faster or a more accurate way.
Exactly.
That's exactly how I want to approach that. That's what is called. That's what, in my opinion, is the way of solving a problem in here. If I can make my teams um, what I hired them for in terms of planning and allocation, that's the best use of
Hmm.
human resources. It is not that they couldn't do it in the past. Even then, they could have done it, but it's just that the the way the SaaS companies has brought up in the past, or the way I've written the legacy architectures and everything, it hasn't been scaled. Now they're slapping an LLM on top of it and just saying that, hey, you know what, we are AI driven and all of that. That is still not providing value. That's
Exactly.
Yeah, the bottom line to this is, how can you make your retailers' life more easier with these traditional systems, or with, how can you improvise from there? If you're
Exactly.
not value, then there's no point.
Yeah. And I want to look at it of how these broken architecture will show up in the planning room, right? So when
Mhm.
you look at it, it's really there's a term what we used to use, which is the war of versions, right? So you show up in a planning room, you have a planner that's looking at one set of numbers, you have the floor manager who's looking at another set of number, and the finance department who's looking at another set of number. So now we have to reconcile all this number first of all. So when the underlying signals don't system don't talk, you have to deal with the planning these problems, and ultimately the planning room becomes more of a place of negotiation instead of it being a place of strategy,
Right.
right? So we're spending out of a 3-hour meeting, we're spending the first 2 hours reconciling the number and figuring out if the last week figures or sales figures are accurate, and let alone what next week's figures will be. So ultimately, when those system, if we get those system to talk, you save a humble amount of time. All this negotiation or this reconciliation is taken away, and now we can jump straight into strategizing and coming up with the best plan moving forward.
Yeah. They should be talking more about, hey, what happens if I increase my um, uh, promo by 8% in specific area or a specific store. Those are the strategic issues they should be talking, rather than, hey, what was my rolled up forecast for the last month to this, or last week to this month, or the last for this cluster and that cluster. Those are more geared towards, like, I'm always backward looking.
Hmm.
Again, that's the point where I should be bringing in, okay, I want to see what happens if I want to simulate the scenarios in real time planning. That's exactly how a team should be working, and so that they will have more clarity, and the room of error will be less in terms of their decision making. And as you move forward, like, as you see the accuracy of the data and the numbers, it sets in the truth for the retailer. They'll be like, okay, I can trust the system. My supply chain is absolutely intact.
Yeah, I think that was an interesting point you brought up there, Bob, about like this war room scenario where everyone has three different numbers. I think too, a lot of things that have been done historically from an architecture standpoint were designed with flexibility in mind, because they knew there was potentially gaps, or they knew there was the need to be able to kind of modify as needed and re-upload. But I think that also inherently is potentially a design flaw in the
Hmm.
world we're talking about, because when you have someone who, like, I like to refer to them as like a spreadsheet hero, right? Like, they're the person who gets it done. They get all the numbers together, they make it work, they actually make the finance system say what everyone expects it to say. But when you're doing that kind of work outside of the finance system, and the finance system is a source system that feeds into this retail operating system like we're describing,
Hmm.
then the retail operating system is only as good as that source feed it's getting. So if there's still not that reconciliation happening within the system of record, but it's occurring outside of it by this individual we'll refer to as the spreadsheet hero, then the platform is only as good as the signals that it feeds it. And I think if you had something like this in place, it would actually help leaders be able to identify, hey, these are some issues we actually have with our underlying systems, because
Mhm.
the decisions we're making on the data we have are good ones, but the data we have isn't current. So what can we do from like a process improvement perspective or a change management perspective to address potential flaws with the underlying systems, so as they roll up to this overarching system of decision making, we're actually making decisions on the most current or the most recent data. So I think it would almost empower the planners a little bit to say like, hey, we made this decision because of this, and if you guys don't have the most accurate numbers in your system, we can't make the right decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
it turns from, like you were saying, fighting over whose number is right, to I'm making decisions quickly based on these numbers. If your numbers aren't right, like, we need to go address that, not my planning. My planning
Exactly.
is sound.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Again, it becomes more of a defensive game than hey, how can we help each other out?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And who likes to live in such an environment?
Yeah, no, it's collaboration, I think, is always is better than defensiveness, right? In
Exactly.
terms of getting a good result for the customers and the organization
Mhm.
as a whole. So I think, we've touched on it quite a bit about this, like, in decision intelligence concept, right? And like using agents or using LLMs for what they're best for, like not necessarily a chatbot, but
Mhm.
helping to gather these signals and make recommendations to take action. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about, like, what are the things that people should be considering as they try to incorporate decision intelligence into a planning platform. Is it about the models? Like, what are kind of like the decision criteria people should do when they evaluate decision intelligence and agents in this type of environment?
So when I started designing the product, right, my initial thought was purely on in terms of, now how do I explain, what the why is it forecast accuracy slow, or why is that, that real why this reorder is happening, or why this reallocation is happening, or why is this signal moved from, in terms of making that decision for me. If every decision can be explainable to the planning team, that is how I thought about it. And the next one is that human in the loop by design, right? Like, humans are aware of, okay, now if you can give that concrete answer of why these things happened, with LLMs and decision making and everything, right? That builds the confidence, and that makes their life more easier, in terms of, instead of just saying that it's just, like rubber stamping a black box. That's where most of these things. And then they're more of a monitoring system at a work than just um like instead of overriding your judgment. That's where the biggest native change comes in terms of how we are using LLMs and AI into these workflows. Like, the very basic thing, like, why is this specific store doesn't have rain jackets, you know uh, rather than saying that my planner knows it better because it's a store that doesn't catch much
The
that
desert.
desert. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So those are some fundamental things, and then there is, some are very complex, where you cannot speak for it. Now, if you can bring in that data, and if the right reasoning and stuff, it makes the planner life so much easier,
Hmm.
right? So that's how we should be thinking, and that's how the decision intelligence should be happening in terms of, especially in the planning and supply chain space. And the important other topic what you brought in, Bob, here is the exception management. It is very core in terms of supply chain management, as in, like, risk intelligence and exception management, in terms of, hey, what are the risks that I'm seeing on my supply chain today, right? I remember talking to a supply chain leader in the past where he has a muscle memory of waking up at 5 in the morning and checking out his emails.
Mm.
You know, and he could, like, even after the systems evolved, even after the decision making has evolved, he was still not able to get out of that muscle memory, and he still does that on time to time basis because the systems used to be like that. Hey, I want to know where my shipment is at the so and so forth of time,
Mhm.
right? So if you provide that information right in that entire orchestration system or operating system that we are talking about, right, with the right reasoning and stuff, it becomes it makes their life so easy.
And we can easily trust the system then.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That human in the loop is more not by choice or not by not by thought. It's by choice. Like, okay, now my coworker or my LLM is making a decision for me, whether can I trust it or not, right?
Mhm.
And how do I trust it? Like, it grows over a period of time, just like another coworker sitting with you, who knows where the shipments are, who knows what's happening over there, who knows if there is a the Strait of Hormuz is open or closed. All of these things.
And that is true, and that is a huge advantage, right? Because you do have like you say, a coworker who has the information and can sift through that information faster than your brain can.
Mhm.
And so, leveraging that coworker, getting that information, letting them actually uh, come out with that information as fast as possible, that empowers you to move forward faster than you used to before. So ultimately, that is a huge advantage that we have and we should start using as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think it speaks to kind of like, leveraging each other's strengths, right? Like a computer is going to be inherently better at sifting through massive amounts
Mhm.
of information, but the human should always have the final say. So when Varun's talking about doing human in the loop by design, I think that's a really important thing as it relates to, like, it's not the models that are so important in AI, it's the systems that you put and constrain the models around and the guardrails you have them operate within. The fact that you continue to have exception management with humans in the loop and having explainability of the AI of how it arrived at this decision, so that
Mhm.
if it was the wrong one, you can provide feedback to improve it over time. I think all of those types of things, like auditability, explainability, guardrails, all of those are much more important than the underlying model itself,
Yeah.
if you truly want to get to, a really good outcome of leveraging your coworker who's great at sifting through massive amounts of information faster than we could.
Yeah.
uh
And
And that is true. And if I can add one thing to it as well, going back to what Varun said with the manager who woke up at 5 a.m. to go through his email just to make sure that everything is running as it should. Uh, as we are moving forward and we're learning to trust the data, we also need to learn to move away from our gut feeling, right? So that is one thing, and trusting not only the data but also the people that you've put in place to work with that data, because most of the time you end up with situation where let's say you have a planning team that went through their plan and they went through the data and they've created a very good plan because of all the signals and all the levers that they're seeing out there, and the manager comes back and says, you know what, I have a gut feel that neon green will be huge next season.
mhm.
Right, and so now we end up overriding the system, and we purchase so many neon green, and then you walk into a store, and this is something that I saw this weekend when I went to the mall. I walked into a store, and it was basically the wall of shame. Right, so you have, and I'm sorry to say that, but you have all the best-selling items who sold out. So you have these empty shelves over here, and then this huge display of clearance that is just sitting there with items that, looking at it, will be like, yeah, I would not have incorporated that into my plan. So
Maybe not
ultimately,
my color, right? Like, it's,
exactly, yeah. So
You want me to from here?
exactly. It creates a culture where planners stop planning for accurate, or stop planning trying to be accurate, but to start trying uh, uh, to be safe, to align with what the manager thinks. And I've seen that time and time again from in many organizations where planners will say, hey, you know what, we actually feel that this is the way to go, but we know that the manager will say we have to go this other way. And so ultimately we will pad or change our forecast to fit what the manager thinks. So ultimately, if you don't trust the model can't save you.
Yeah, yeah. And LLMs are just a commodity, in my opinion. You
Mhm.
know, Cloud is good at something, ChatGPT is good at something. I don't know if anyone is using ChatGPT anymore or not. Manus is good at something. It's just a commodity, in my opinion. Like, you have to use it the best of your advantage.
Mhm.
There's a lot of self-hosted models that you can use, OSS. End of the day, how is it helping your business move forward?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, shots fired at ChatGPT, but no, I think what you described there, Varun, is really important for people to understand, right? Like, if models, I love this analogy. Like, if a model is a race car, it can't really do much without fuel, can't go anywhere. And if your business data and intelligence is the fuel to power this model in your environment,
Mm-hmm.
the systems that you build around it and constrain it, or the racetrack, is ultimately what lets the model, actually do something, right?
Mhm.
Otherwise it's just kind of like a
Absolutely.
shiny object in a museum. So I
Mm-hmm.
think what's more important than the model itself is the business intelligence and the data that you give the model, and then the
Mm-hmm.
systems you constrain and let the model operate in to let it achieve the outcomes that you want and you desire, right? Like, if you're building a racetrack with a bunch of tight turns for a Formula One model, it's not going to do very well, right? Like, that's kind of the thing. So I think, that was great. And Bob, I was laughing when you were describing that,
The
the
water
wall of
shape.
shame, because I'm a pretty frugal person myself when it comes to apparel. Like, this is pretty plain. This is a nice Costco polo, so didn't have to go to the wall of shame for that. But I think, a lot of times my closet looks a little more eccentric than I would probably like, just because I'm always usually shopping the deals in the clearance section, and a lot of times those are the crazy patterns and crazy colors that didn't necessarily sell up front. So it was funny that you brought that up. I thought that was great. So I guess, just kind of one last question of the roundtable. So if I guess, what's the thing that teams or organizations should really focus on
Mhm.
first? If they want to do better forecasting, if they want a better forecasting future, they want to improve their margin at scale, like we've talked about through this episode arc of retail, like, what should they do to get started now? Like, what's the
Mhm.
most important thing to do first?
Yeah, I'll pick it up and say, going back to one thing that Varun said earlier, right? So you need to focus on process over tool first, right? And by there, I mean that don't just buy the shiny new AI system and plug it into a process that is broken, a process that does not really work that well, right? So you need to map out exactly how decisions are getting made today and identify where the human frictions are, right? And then clean up your attribution, make sure that you know exactly how or why your product is being purchased. Was it the price? Was it the weather? Was it the influencer post? All that information before you start bringing it into a new system. So if you if you get the process and the attribution right, the technology will actually have a foundation to build on. So ultimately, you need to stop trying to automate chaos, but fix the chaos first, and automation uh, will go on its own.
I want to ask. So instead of every time Sean asking us questions, I want to ask Sean a question.
Sure.
You've been with us for the last 4 5 months now. Now we've been working on Aurora, and what's your take on that? What do you
I
what do
thought
you, what do you feel?
no, I
Yeah,
thought
that's a good
Bob,
question.
I thought Bob nailed it. I think the old adage stands, garbage in, garbage out. if you put an AI model on top of chaos, all you're going to get is polished chaos, which I think is actually inherently more dangerous because it seems trustworthy, but it's not, because under the hood it's still making decisions off noise rather than signals. So I think Bob was describing it very well, where the attribution piece is huge, where you have to have the different flags associated with why things occurred in the way they did in order to accurately forecast in the future, as well as take action or make recommendations on what should be done to improve the outcomes moving forward. So I think the biggest thing, and I've kind of seen this the last 3 years working more on the data side of AI, is that you really need to ensure the foundation is sound
Hmm.
and is set up in a way that's governed, secure, and builds confidence, so that when you start layering advanced concepts on top, the advanced concepts are, realistic in terms of what it's recommending, as opposed to this concept of polished chaos.
Yeah, we don't want to
Thank you.
end up with a what how you call it, lipstick on the pig.
Correct. Yes. Yes, exactly. Well, thank you, Varun. I appreciated that. Feel free to do that more often in episodes moving forward. But I guess let's let you have the final say here on where people should get started with how they should start getting ready for forecasting, or this new age of forecasting.
So again, like I want to come into my work and see what's most important to me to make my job easier. That's how I see, in terms of in terms of forecast and in terms of planning or in terms of decision making. If those jobs are if I can do that on a day on my Monday morning at 7, I don't even need a proper coffee like right early in the morning. I can wait until like afternoon to get my coffee. That's how I would see. And the
Mhm.
next thing is I want to go into a meeting doing a strategic decision making than just okay, now I have to prepare a bunch of slides, prepare a bunch of these things, Excel's, spreadsheets, and all of that. Yeah, Excel spreadsheet. I love Excel. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, I do not want to you know budget upon with so many numbers and which doesn't talk to other teams. That wall has to be completely taken off. That's how the new age forecasting and planning should happen.
Mhm.
I think that was a great executive level view in how to pitch this, in terms of how to get started. Is why do we keep doing this? There's got to be a better way, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So no, that was great. Thank you guys. This has been a really fun 3 episode arc deep dive into retail, how important forecasting is, how it compounds, as Bob mentioned earlier, how all of this impacts margin at scale. Just wanted to say again, thank you, Bob, for joining us for these last 3 episodes and helping us learn how to hopefully do a pretty good podcast. And I hope you've had a good time. I know
It,
I've had a lot of
it,
fun in our
it
discussion so
definitely
far.
was my pleasure, and I enjoyed each and every moments of it, bringing out, uh, I'll say, rather challenging questions, bringing out the best out of us, and ultimately shining the spotlight on why we do what we do. Right. So
Right.
definitely, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I think it's, like I said, it's been a lot of fun, and we'll be sure to share some more information when we post this podcast on LinkedIn around Bob's book again. And then, Bob, if you want to send me some more info on which Barnes and Noble in Frisco, I can include that as well, in case anyone happens to be in the area and wants to talk to you in person. I think that'd be a really cool
Definitely.
opportunity. Yeah, and then so this is a wrap on retail. So next episode, we're going to be stepping out of retail entirely, and we're going to be moving from the shop floor, or I guess the shopping floor, to the factory floor, the different type of shop floor. So next time we're going to be going into manufacturing, a little bit of a different industry, different pressures, different signals, but a lot of it is a little bit related in the sense of suppliers, sourcing, how these different things impact. Your lead times might shift a little bit. manufacturing and how you juggle things, but I think a lot of the core concepts will be similar, and
Mhm.
we'll be looking into kind of the same thing, the premise of this season. What are the signals and what's the noise as
Mhm.
it relates to the manufacturing environment, and how do we take it from being a reactive one to a predictable one?
Right.
So really looking forward to dive into manufacturing, but can't thank Bob enough for helping guide us here with these retail episodes. So thank you everyone for tuning in. This has been AI After Hours presented by Astra, and we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope to see you next time. Thank
No,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.